The morning of our 7th wedding anniversary, I woke up to an empty bed and a text message from a stranger. It was a photograph, a selfie taken on the deck of our beach house in the Hamptons. The woman in the photo was young, blonde, and wearing my white sundress, the one with the hand-embroidered daisies I had bought at a boutique in Positano. She was kissing the cheek of a man whose face I knew better than my own, Julian Ashford, and my husband, the father of my 2 children. The man who had sworn 7 years ago today that he would love and cherish me until death did us part. Death hadn't parted us, but apparently a 26-year-old Pilates instructor named Chloe Moreau had. I sat in the kitchen of our Manhattan penthouse, my phone trembling in my hand, and I let the truth wash over me like ice water, the late nights of the office. The weekends away for client emergencies. The way he had stopped looking at me when I spoke, his eyes sliding past my face, as if I were a piece of furniture he no longer noticed. The way he had stopped touching me, not just in bed, but entirely to hand on the shoulder and a kiss on the forehead. The small, casual intimacies of marriage vanished so gradually I hadn't noticed they were gone until they were already buried. I had given this man 7 years that I had given him my 20s, my career, my body. I had carried his children, nursed them through fevers and nightmares, packed their lunches, and attended their parent-teacher conferences while he flew to Tokyo and London and places he swore were for business. I had believed him that I had trusted him. I had loved him with the kind of wholehearted, uncomplicated love that only 23-year-old brides can summon before the world teaches them that love is not enough. And in return, he had given our beach house, the one my grandmother left me, to his mistress for an anniversary getaway. I didn't cry. I had learned, in 7 years of marriage to a man who specialized in erasure, not to cry where anyone could see me. Instead, I made a phone call. "Margaret," I said when my godmother answered, "I need your help." The beach house was a 3-hour drive from the city, and I spent every mile of it planning. Not what I would say. I had known what I would say since the moment I saw that photograph. What I planned was the aftermath, the logistics, the strategy. Julian Ashford had spent 7 years underestimating me. He had spent 7 years believing I was the quiet, accommodating wife, the woman who would smile at his galas and raise his children and never, ever make a scene. He had forgotten who I was before I met him. He had forgotten that I was Elena Vance, the granddaughter of a woman who had built a shipping empire from nothing, the goddaughter of the most powerful corporate attorney on the eastern seaboard. He had forgotten that the beach house he was currently defiling with his mistress was not his. IT was mine. The deed was in my name. The trust that owned it was controlled by my family. And the prenuptial agreement he had signed before our wedding, the one his lawyers had assured him was standard, contained a clause so devastating that it had taken my godmother's legal team 3 years to perfect it. Adultery forfeits all claims. If Julian Ashford was unfaithful, he walked away with nothing, not the house, not the cars, not the joint accounts, not a single share of the company I had helped him build. Nothing. I had insisted on that clause. Julian had laughed and called me paranoid. "It's fine," he had said, kissing my forehead. "I'll never cheat on you. You're the only woman I'll ever want." And I had believed him, because I was 23 and in love and didn't yet understand that a man who protests too much is a man who is already lying. The beach house appeared at the end of a winding coastal road, its white clapboard walls gleaming in the afternoon sun. Julian's Porsche was parked in the driveway. Beside it was a cherry red convertible, Chloe's car, presumably, the one he had bought her with the money from our joint account. I parked my car behind both of theirs, blocking them in, and I walked up to the front door. I didn't knock. I had a key. The living room was a disaster. Empty champagne bottles littered the coffee table. A trail of discarded clothing led toward the master bedroom. My clothing, I realized, the white sundress from Positano now crumpled on the floor beside a man's linen shirt. The windows were open, the sea breeze fluttering the curtains, and from the bedroom, I could hear voices, laughter, the low, intimate murmur of 2 people who believed they were alone in the world. I pushed open the bedroom door. Julian was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, his hair mussed. Chloe was beside him, wrapped in a sheet, her blonde hair spilling over her shoulders. They were holding champagne flutes. They were toasting something, their anniversary, perhaps the anniversary of the first time they betrayed me. And when they saw me standing in the doorway, their faces went through a series of transformations that I will remember for the rest of my life. Shock, disbelief, and then, on Julian's face, that familiar, defensive anger that I had seen 100 times before. The anger of a man who knew he was wrong and had decided, preemptively, to blame his wife for catching him. Ow. He stood up, his champagne flute clattering to the floor. What are you doing here? This isn't what it looks like. Really? What is it then? A business meeting? A Pilates session? You're coaching her on her breathing techniques. Chloe pulled the sheet tighter around herself. Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. Julian told me you were separated. He told me the marriage was over. Did he? And the white sundress, did he tell you that was yours too? Or did you just help yourself? Julian stepped between us, his hand raised in a gesture of appeasement. Elena, let's be reasonable. We can discuss this at home. We don't need to involve anyone else. Involve anyone else? I laughed, and the sound was cold and sharp as broken glass. Julian, the entire reason you married me was to involve me in your life. MY money to MY connections. My grandmother's name. You wanted all of it, and now you think you can just discard me for a Pilates instructor and keep the lifestyle I provided. I built Ashford Technologies. His voice rose, his composure cracking. I built it from nothing. You were the investor. You wrote checks. I did the work. You did the work. That's interesting because my forensic accountants have been reviewing the company's records for the past 3 months, and they've found some very interesting things. Shell companies, offshore accounts, funds diverted from the pension pool. The Department of Justice is going to be very interested, Julian. His face went white. You wouldn't destroy me. We have children. You have children. You haven't spoken to either of them in 2 weeks. You missed Lily's piano recital because you were at a conference in Chicago. I have the receipts, Julian. I have everything. The doorbell rang. Julian's head whipped toward the sound. Chloe clutched the sheet tighter, her eyes wide with dawning terror. That will be my godmother, I said, and her legal team, and the process server, and I believe a representative from the Attorney General's office. You're going to want to put on a shirt. The deposition that followed was the most devastating corporate takedown in a decade. Julian Ashford was charged with 17 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence my godmother's team had gathered was overwhelming: bank records, wire transfers, the testimony of former employees who had been silenced with threats, and severance packages. Chloe Morrow, who had been an unwitting participant in Julian's schemes, was granted immunity in exchange for her testimony. She told the court everything. The affair, the shell companies, the money he had hidden in accounts she helped him open. Julian was convicted on all charges. He was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. His assets were seized, his company was liquidated, and his reputation was destroyed. The children, Lily and Gabriel, were granted to me in the divorce, along with full custody and a settlement that included the beach house, the penthouse, and every remaining dollar of Julian's frozen fortune. Chloe disappeared after the trial. The last I heard, she had moved back to her hometown in Ohio and was working as a receptionist at a dental office. She sent me a letter once, apologizing for her role in the affair, that I didn't reply. Third-party objective commentary. The architecture of this revenge narrative is notable for its structural elegance. The author constructs a protagonist who weaponizes her husband's arrogance against him with almost surgical precision. Julian Ashford's fatal flaw is not lust or greed. It is the chronic underestimation of his wife's intelligence and resources. He treats her as a passive object, a quiet, accommodating presence, precisely because he cannot conceive of her as a strategist in her own right. The prenuptial clause is the narrative's Chekhov's gun, introduced in flashback, seemingly a paranoia, then revealed as the fulcrum of the entire takedown. It works because it reframes the protagonist's earlier compliance, not as weakness, but as foresight. She was not blind to his nature. She was insuring against it. The beach house confrontation scene derives its power from a careful imbalance of power. Julian and Chloe believe they occupy a space of transgressive freedom, the champagne, the laughter, the stolen intimacy. The wife's silent entry into that space, her refusal to scream or weep, her calm delivery of devastating information, constitutes a complete inversion of their expectations. She does not beg for an explanation because she already has the answers. She does not appeal to his conscience because she knows he has none. The detail of the white sundress, worn by the mistress, purchased by the wife, functions as a particularly elegant metaphor for marital erasure. Chloe literally wears the wife's clothing, inhabits the wife's space, occupies the wife's role, while the wife is rendered invisible. When the wife appears in the doorway, she is not entering a room. She is reclaiming an identity that has been stolen from her. 5 years after the trial, I stand on the deck of the beach house, my beach house, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. Lily is 14 now, already taller than me, her dark hair blowing in the sea breeze. Gabriel is 11, racing his dog along the water's edge. They're happy, I think. As happy as children can be when their father is a convicted felon serving a 14-year sentence. I have done my best to shield them from the worst of it, to let them believe that their father made mistakes, but is not a monster. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I don't know if there is a right thing. Julian has written me letters, pages of apologies and justifications and pleas for reconciliation. He says he has found God in prison. He says he understands now what he destroyed. He says he wants to see the children when he gets out. I read the letters once and file them away and I don't reply. The company, Ashford Technologies, no longer exists and its place is Vance Innovations, a boutique AI firm that I founded with the settlement money. It is smaller than Julian's empire, but it is mine. Every patent, every product, every line of code was built by me, for me, with no one to steal the credit. I've been profiled in Forbes. I have been invited to speak at Davos. I have been called a visionary, a pioneer, a woman who rebuilt her life from the ashes of her marriage. I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as a woman who finally learned to stop apologizing for her own strength. Somewhere, Julian Ashford is sitting in a prison cell, counting the years. Somewhere, Chloe Moreau is living a life of quiet obscurity. And I am here, on the deck of the beach house that my grandmother gave me, watching my children play in the surf, feeling the sun on my face and the wind in my hair and the deep, abiding peace of a woman who has nothing left to lose. The wife who was invisible became the woman who could never be unseen. And she never, ever let anyone dim her light again.